History does not remember the cautious, it remembers the bold, and none were bolder than General George S. Patton, a soldier, scholar, and warrior, a man who lived for battle, who believed war was the truest test of courage and the essence of manhood. Battle is the most magnificent competition in which a human being can indulge. It brings out all that is best. It removes all that is base. All men are afraid in battle. The coward is the one who lets his fear overcome his sense of duty. Duty is the essence of manhood. Today, we dive into the life and legend of Patton. Not the Hollywood caricature, not the shallow criticisms, but the truth. A truth that makes him one of the greatest military men the world has ever seen. Patton was more than a soldier. He was a student of war itself. He devoured the histories of Alexander the Great, Hannibal Barca, and Napoleon Bonaparte. He studied their battles, their tactics, their genius for mobility. From them, he learned that the art of war was not about holding ground. It was about striking, maneuvering, destroying. He carried those lessons into the 20th century, fusing ancient brilliance with modern steel. Patton knew he was born for battle. In his journals, he admitted he felt as though he had fought in wars of the past, as if destiny had shaped him for this moment, and when the world plunged into global war, he proved his name rightly belongs in the same breath as those giants of history. Patton's first great test came in North Africa, 1942. The US Army was green and struggling after early defeats against the Germans. Eisenhower sent Patton to take command. Patton's method was simple and brutal. Discipline, speed, aggression. He imposed order, demanded excellence, and restored fighting spirit. His men would later say that under Patton, they feared no one more than him, and therefore, they feared no enemy either. The Americans rallied, and soon Patton's armored spearheads were driving the vaunted Afrika Korps back across the sands. Patton's legend was truly forged in France. After D-Day in June 1944, the Allies were bogged down in the bocage country of Normandy. The Germans turned every hedgerow into a fortress. Progress was agonizingly slow. Then came Operation Cobra. On July 25th, a massive Allied bombardment blasted open a hole in the German defenses. Eisenhower unleashed Patton's newly formed Third Army, nearly 250,000 men and 1,500 tanks, to exploit the breach. Patton's doctrine was clear: never stop. His armored divisions didn't just advance, they surged, bypassing strong points, enveloping entire German units, and cutting supply lines. His speed disoriented the Wehrmacht. Within weeks, Patton had his forces racing across France, often advancing 60 to 80 miles in a single day. At the Falaise pocket, his pincers closed with Canadian and British forces, trapping nearly 50,000 German soldiers. A good plan violently executed now is better than a perfect plan executed next week, Patton said, and Cobra was the living proof of that creed. What followed was one of the greatest pursuits in military history. The Third Army advanced so fast that Eisenhower's staff could barely keep up with the maps. Patton's challenge wasn't the Germans, it was gasoline. His columns burned fuel faster than it could be supplied. He pushed his men through day and night, in rain and mud, covering over 600 miles in a single month. His tactics were simple but devastating. Strike deep, hit the enemy's rear, and force him to collapse under the weight of your momentum. Patton understood something timeless. Wars are not won by sitting still, but by hitting harder and faster than the enemy can respond. December 1944. Hitler launched one last desperate counteroffensive in the Ardennes, the Battle of the Bulge. The Germans smashed through Allied lines, threatening to split the front in two. While others reeled, Patton was already moving. In one of the most brilliant maneuvers of the war, He wheeled his Third Army, 250,000 men, 90 degrees in just 48 hours, marching through snow and ice to strike the German flank. His attack relieved the besieged 101st Airborne at Bastogne and turned the tide. The Bulge had been Hitler's last gambit. Patton broke it and paved the way toward Allied victory. By spring 1945, Patton's Third Army had liberated vast swaths of Europe, capturing over 1.5 million German soldiers and advancing deep into the heart of Nazi territory. His men discovered concentration camps, freeing survivors and revealing Nazi crimes. But Patton's eyes were already on the future. To him, the war wasn't ending, it was shifting. He saw the Soviet Union for what it was, a brutal, expansionist empire. Already, the Red Army had overrun Eastern Europe. In Poland, Czechoslovakia, the Baltics, and beyond, they imposed terror. Between executions and widespread atrocities, millions were killed or enslaved under Soviet occupation. Patton commented, "We are turning Germany into a desert and calling it peace. The Germans are not our enemies anymore. The Russians are." And he was right. The Cold War that followed would prove him prophetic. You've surely heard plenty of people not mince words when discussing Patton. They call him reckless. They call him cruel or arrogant. They say he didn't know when to stop. But Patton's so-called flaws were the very qualities that made him indispensable. He didn't wait, he acted. He didn't hesitate, he struck. Where others planned, Patton attacked. And in war, that aggressiveness saves lives. He'd say, "Nobody ever defended anything successfully. There is only attack, and attack, and attack some more." Far from a liability, this spirit was his genius. He was one of the greatest men America and the world has ever had to offer. And while he was not an emperor or a conqueror of the known world, his name stands carved beside the immortals of war. Because when worlds go to war, you need men like Patton. The object of war is not to die for your country, but to make the other bastard die for his. Better to fight for something than live for nothing. It is foolish and wrong to mourn the men who died. Rather, we should thank God that such men lived. These were not just lines for speeches. They were the philosophy of a man who believed in courage, duty, and sacrifice. Patton's Third Army liberated Europe, and his legacy, fierce, unyielding, unapologetic, remains a reminder of what true leadership looks like when civilization hangs in the balance. Patton lived as he fought, fast, bold, relentless. He died in 1945, not by bullet or battlefield, but by a car crash in occupied Germany. Some call it fate, others a Soviet conspiracy. But one thing is certain, as long as men speak of war, the name General George S. Patton will never be forgotten. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed the story, make sure to like the video, subscribe to the channel, and share it with someone who loves history as much as we do. Drop a comment below. Let me know what you think about the show and what story you'd like to see next. Until then, I'll see you in the next chapter.